Hi, welcome back to another reading of Climbing Maya by Ken LaSalle. What is success? We're working on finding out, and I'm on chapter 2 today of Climbing Maya. Let's read. Chapter 2. I sat on the bedside that night, staring at Vicky, wondering when the break would come. After all, here we were, married less than a year, and I'd become the deadbeat husband. In her shoes, I would have snapped long ago. But there she was, getting under the covers, which boggled my mind after the heat of the day had turned the house into a roaster, and cuddling her dog. I told her I wanted to apologize again, that I felt I should. She shook her head. I know you'll find a job. I know everything will be fine. Don't worry, this wasn't your fault. You'll bounce back. How does she do that? Accept the world completely as it is? How? I was raised in a standard American family. I'm surprised nobody's commented about me slurping coffee. It must be disgusting. I was raised in a standard American family. My parents were divorced. My mother was miserable, overworked, and fearful of how her children would turn out. The majority of the time, my siblings and I hated each other's guts. That's normal, right? In addition, all of us were indoctrinated into the Christian religion at a young age. I took it more seriously than perhaps the others. I became what we called born again, and something of a fanatic. Yeah, me. Because there was this emptiness inside that I thought religion could fill. It has always been there. But the more I tried to fill it with religion, the more I realized, to my regret, that it was working about as well as fast food. Filling? Yes. Satisfying? No. So I backed out of my Christian ties. People called me an atheist because they couldn't figure out what other label fit. I studied philosophy. I studied religions, opening myself up to different schools of thought. It wasn't easy when I was younger. In fact, it took many years. My bookcases filled with Thurman, Campbell, Sartre, a copy of the Bhagavad Gita, the Bible, the Book of Mormon, and so on and on and on. I suppose I don't envy anyone trying to classify my beliefs. When people asked, though most chose to use the epithet atheist, I'd tell them I felt closest to Buddhism. Buddhism is like any popular party game. It's easy to learn, but nearly impossible to master. As far as I can see, only one person has done it so far. The way I look at it, it's more of a philosophy than a religion. And I'll give it points for that right off. It doesn't require faith, but it does require thought. At its core are 4 basic beliefs, referred to as the 4 Noble Truths. You can count them off very quickly. 1, 2, 3, 4. All life is suffering. Suffering comes from desires. To stop suffering, stop the desires. To do that, well, then you get into the Eightfold Path, which they slip into Truth 4. Right views, right values, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right meditation. I told you it wasn't easy to master. And yet, there was Vicky, my own beloved Buddha, letting go of her desire for the perfect husband with the perfect job, and loving me without hesitation and without craving, detaching herself from any disappointment and doing what a spouse is supposed to do, provide her support. May I just add that when the shoe's on the other foot and she's the one with the dilemma, her Buddha nature is not nearly as perfect, and she becomes just as neurotic as I. I can only hope, though, that I am equally supportive. I had no reply. I kissed her and went downstairs, letting her sleep. She still had to go to work the next day. The idea that some people find life easier than others is old and often repeated, usually with contempt. But I find Vicky's acceptance both refreshing and amusing. By her own admission, she doesn't understand the first thing about Buddhism. Last time she checked, she was a Lutheran. And yet, she possesses this natural inclination. She's more Buddhist than anyone I know because she is so without trying. She's so in touch with her Buddha nature that she doesn't even need to think about it. That's how it should be. I wrote this book a long time ago. So I can tell her the virtues of her attitude, but I can't find that attitude for myself. I'm all theory. In practice, I fail. It's always been a problem for me. I'm all theory, no practice. I remember sitting on a friend's balcony many years ago, smoking a cigarette, discussing the particle wave duality of light. He worked with fiber optic cables and so understood it on a practical level. I went on about theory. He couldn't care less. He was just doing his job. I could never do his job. And so, there we were. Theory and practice. It frustrates me that I can't be a better Buddhist. Then I realize that striving towards Buddhahood is in itself contrary to Buddhism. Theory and practice. That's why I grew into the man I am. As a writer and an actor, I don't need to know how to do anything. It's all theory. I made a living writing marketing material for computer networking companies that built a lot of money out of people, that built the highest in high-tech gadgets. I didn't need to know how to make those gadgets. I just had to understand the theory, which is why I could do the job. I'd left my acting life far behind after several near misses with plays I'd written, and earning a little money plus gaining more weight than I could ever account for. So that was done. But the same kind of rule applied. In acting, if you comprehend the theory, pretend, you have the practice. There are a million little exercises actors have to aid in the practice. I've always thought they were a foolish waste of time. I have it, I'd say. I know what to do. But you have to do this exercise, they'd tell me. Honestly, I don't need to play any of your imagination games. I've got it. Then improvise some poetry. Meaningless, silly. And I'd do it again in a second if I could lose a pound or two. So, there was Vicky, calm and in control, and me having a series of panic attacks, and I'd only been out of work for a few hours. I'll go look for work, I told her as she was expecting me to join her in bed that night. Sleep, or anything else, just wasn't going to happen. So, I went to my computer down in the garage. The internet is an incredible tool. Not only is there a whole lot of porn, it has revolutionized looking for a job. It's a movable feast of employment with every day offering more and more opportunity. Or so I thought that night as I emailed one resume after another. The next day I realized how outdated my resume was, so I updated it. Then I figured cover letters might be a good idea. I drafted those. Then I separated the resumes and the cover letters into two categories, marketing and technical writing, to broaden my appeal to employers. Then it was Monday. It came that fast. I'd been working on my job search all weekend long and making no discernible progress. Sean called, asking if I'd like to go out for a bite to eat. I don't have a job, I told him. My treat, okay? He asked. And so we had a date. But before I left, I figured I should alert my family and friends to what was going on before they heard it secondhand. And so, an email, because back then, that's what we sent. Gee, where to start? I was planning on sending out an email pretty soon to catch everyone up to date, but every time I drafted it, I realized I didn't have anything, and I didn't want my life to sound boring. Here's the thing. I got canned on Friday. Yep, me. My happy ass. Canned. It's been building up for some time, and I guess should have come as no surprise. That said, if you know of anyone looking for any bright, talented, industrious, yada, 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 let me know, okay? Vicky had already left for work, so I took the dog for a quick walk and left for Sean's. He lives close, just up the 91 freeway. What I wasn't counting on, however, was the 91 freeway. It was Monday. It was Southern California. It was packed. A few days before, I'd been driving south to work, dressed in slacks and a pressed shirt. Now, I sat in bumper-to-bumper traffic in shorts and a t-shirt, and I looked at those in the cars beside me. Intent looks on those faces, the faces of fighters. When people fight traffic, they get an angry look, as though the world is trying to keep them from their livelihood or, after work, from their home. Yet, it couldn't be more obvious that we're all in the same boat. I played a game I often played when I drove. I wondered what those people's lives were like. How much better off than me were they? You see, the writing thing was supposed to take off. After high school, it was universally expected, at least among those I knew, that I'd win a Pulitzer or at least an Oscar for my acting. It was up to me. Those expectations weighed upon me. And when they didn't happen, I couldn't help but consider myself a failure. I went into college with a major in theater and changed it after too many disappointments. My major then became journalism, and that worked out in the worst possible way. I spent most of my early 20s experiencing one success after another in my chosen field, but never wasted much time on classes. God forbid. But after I spent most of my 30s as a college dropout, I went back with a different plan. Rather than work on those things that were expected, I'd major in something I wanted to learn. That major was philosophy. And as I prepared to enter the University of California, Irvine, to earn my bachelor's degree in philosophy, my first marriage fell apart. Another dream compromised by life's cold disregard. My skills as a writer helped me through the next 5 years. Now, I was out of a job. I was at the bottom of the social ladder. How much more successful were those people sharing the freeway? Were they executives? Did they own a business of their own? Vicki and I wanted to refinance the loan on our little condominium. How many of these people owned bigger houses than us? Vicki and I planned to start a family. How many of those people could afford that luxury? The stream of questions continued, growing longer with each person I saw. Despite what you may think, they weren't angry questions, not at all. I just wanted to see how things were in their lives, and I wondered why my life never seemed to measure up. Why wasn't I successful? What does that even mean? Successful. What follows is the journey, this question, this search for meaning about the nature of success took me on. It was unexpected, unbidden, and even unwanted. Didn't I have enough on my mind? But as soon as I asked, I knew I shouldn't have, because of the headache it would bring before I even began to find an answer. And that, my friends, is chapter 2. Join me next week, where I will be reading more from Climbing Maya, available in ebook, paperback, and audiobook from Amazon, iTunes, Audible, Barnes & Noble, you name it, it's probably there. If it's not, then head on down to kenlasalle.com, and I'll see you next week for the next chapter of Climbing Maya. And there you have it. You've just survived another Ken LaSalle video. For more information about new releases, projects in the works, or even stuff from the archives, head on down to kenlasalle.com. You can also find me on Facebook, Twitter, and all around social media, just as long as it's called Facebook or Twitter. Thanks for your support, as always. Be sure to subscribe to this channel, and I'll be back soon with more nonsense.